Do you need any framework to do CQRS or event sourcing?
Actually, not really. The idea, this is something that has been a long debate during these years, because before this formulation, sometimes the things get a bit tricky, because people try to implement a base class for object that do those things. But with this formulation, actually, the thing that you end up with is two functions. You have a function that is decide, which takes a command and the state and returns an event list. And we also have evolve function, which take a state on an event and return a state, like that. When I say that, I don't need to know anything more about my domain. So implementing the domain requires to understand how we talk about time, doing things like event storming or event modeling, to be able to actually decompose the required event and all that. And that's a part in the design that is important. But once those decisions have been taken, your domain will end up being these two functions. There is no way your domain will have a different signature. So once we know that, it's actually quite simple to run it. So my simplest way to run it is this one. So the only thing that we need more, and I didn't introduce in the schema, is an initial state, which is the value of the state before anything happens. So we have an initial state, which is a state. We have an evolution, evolve, and decide. And so, for instance, if I want to know my current state when something happened before, I take the history. So it's a list of events. I will just so I will write it in a kind of F# way, but you will see it's
sure.
So you have an event 1, event 2, like that. And then what you do is just that use them to fold your function evolve starting from initial state. So I will explain what it does. What it does is that this function takes the initial state, takes the evolution function, takes the first event, give them to the evolve, give both the initial state and event 1 to the evolve function. It will return the state after the first event. And then fold will take this output, the second event, give them to the evolve function. We will get the state after the second event. And we start again. So in the end, we get the last state, the current state. Okay, so you don't need framework here, because the framework is already list.fold. Aggregate in C# and most libraries have things like that. And if you don't, it's really easy to write yourself with a loop and just mutating a variable. Once you've done that, you have your current state. And if you want to take a decision based on that, you can just call the decide function with the command. So here, let's say that commands come from deserializing an HTTP call or something like that. We have the command. We get in some way in the database the previous events. We load them. We call this. Here we call the decide function with the command and the result of this, which is our current state, and the result will be new events. So here, the output is the new events. So I have just to save in some way in the database, and I'm done. In the same way, if I want to publish them so that some other things can subscribe, it's possible, or I can also run projections directly in the same scope to be able to avoid eventual consistency. And so everything at the end will be updated. And when I finish my HTTP call, it's done. Okay. Here I can reload every time, or we can do even simpler. Simpler is this version. I can say, okay, let mutable. So here we will be mutable state, which is the initial state. And then I do a function that takes a command. I will write it like that. And what it's doing is just say, okay, let new events call decide with my command and my state, and then let new state equal it will be evolve with my state and new events with a list.fold. This is list.fold. Yep, you understand me. Events. And then I can just store my my new state in the state. State, new state, and I'm ready to take the next command. So this is exactly the same function, but here I will keep the state in this variable during the whole
Constricting.
life of the program. So it's not a problem, it can just run, okay? And doing this change, I don't need to make any change on my actual domain. I don't care, I don't know what the domain is doing, it will run anyway. Of course, what you can do here is load from your event stream and fold the past event to populate your initial state. And then here, each time, save your state in some way, but also write the events and all that. But you know that the state is always the result of your evolution function, and the events are always the result of your decision function, and that you cannot take decision without inputting the right state. So the infrastructure is not changing the way the interaction between folding state and taking decision is done. So you can write all your tests that just test these two functions. So it's just pure function. It's really easy to test, pass some values, get some result, and then run it on an infrastructure with a database. And you never have a single change to do to the actual domain functions. So you never introduce bugs in your decision due to your infrastructure, which is quite convenient.
So we can conclude that we don't need any framework because each language, depending each language, we have some tools.
Yeah, tools and constructs that will make it easier. But usually you have something like 300 maximum lines of infrastructure. When you want to, even if you want to make everything async, which is what most people do, because you just have to async in two places here. If you want to keep snapshots, a question that is often raised, introducing snapshot in that is really easy too. You can keep state in memory. You can be ready for load balancing, and even if the events happen on another computer, you will be still ready to do the next command accordingly. And all that. And even if you do all these things, so a system that will be ready to actually distribute and all that, it will be 100 line of code. I mean,
Okay.
I don't need a framework
you don't need
for
a
100.
framework for that.
Because with the framework, you will have to give more parameters to have some options or not, depending on what you want to do, which will be almost as big as just writing it. So I don't think it makes much sense to write a framework for this.
Okay, thank you. And for the CQRS part is the same.
Yeah, the thing is that for the CQRS, once you have your events, what you do is just that you write more projections. So this is a projection, and I will show how it works. The idea then is that for projection, you just write things that looks like the evolve function, but with other code. So when you want to answer to a question about what's happening, you need the current state. So having the current state is just taking previous state, what just happened, so the event, and produce a new state, which is exactly the same signature. So you write function like that takes that start from 0, take a next event, produce a new state. Of course, maybe if you have a database, it can be more convenient to actually make a function that has a connection to the database, takes the next event, and mutates the database for the next step, which is equivalent to that, but in a more mutable way directly to the database, which is totally okay. But the idea is that you just listen to events and prepare the next question. But when you have a few changes, you will have few events, so this code will run quite infrequently. But the database will be ready to answer hard questions, okay? So even if this operation is not easy and expensive, you will do it only on change. Usually when you have costs like aggregation and things like that, which are costly, what you do is that you introduce a cache. Like you do the first question, you're not ready, you say, okay, it will take a lot of time to make the computation. You make the computation, you put it in a cache, and you answer. So the next question should be fast. But then a hard question is, when do you invalidate it? So if your invalidation period is too short, you will recompute too frequently and it's useless because the data didn't change and you recompute it. If you make it too long, the data will not be fresh. At some moment, the data will change and you will not recompute. And here, the idea is just that it's like a cache, but that you update each time the actual value change. So it's the best moment to invalidate a cache. So it's quite the same, yeah. And if at some point this representation doesn't fit with your need anymore, if you saved the events, it's totally possible to start from fresh, reapply in this view model all the change, have a view model that is ready for the new questions, and start from there.
That
So-
we name projections.
Projections, yes.
Yeah. So could you talk more about projections for us? For example, how many projections I can have in my system?
As many as you need.
Okay.
I mean, the thing is that it depends if the same question can be answered easily with the same shape of data. The idea is to keep the questions easy to and fast to answer. So you prepare the data for that. So maybe you have many different questions, but which are all fast and efficient with the same model. In this case, you will need only one projection. But if you have very different need in terms of querying, it's better to make different projections to different models that will make it easier to answer these questions. So depends then on the system, of course, but the idea is here. And after that, yes, for some questions, the different data storage can be more efficient. So after that, of course, it's trade-off for the price of this database and all that, the cost efficiency of having another part in your system with different infrastructure. But the thing is that, of course, if you have mostly tables on all that and you just need a few documents, maybe it can be easier to store documents in your SQL database. But if you have the team organized for and you also have the possibility to introduce a document database, it's totally okay to do so. And it will depend on your need and the difficulty to introduce more database. But the thing is that the complexity will not be at the code level. The complexity will be just at the operational level and the maturity of your team with operational concerns, of course.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Jeremy, for all this explanation. Yeah, you can have a seat and talk us more about your book. And if you have some references for people who is watching this video, who is interested about event sourcing, CQRS, and wants to know more, to explore that, what do you propose?
Yeah. Yes, so I'm currently working on a book. It's making some progress, so I'm quite happy with it. Eric Evans, the author of Domain-Driven Design, asked me for this book because there is a serious lack of good reference about event sourcing. A lot of blog posts and all that, but a few complete series and a lot of different insights from everywhere. So I tried to write it with three main concerns, which are the first one is writing the domain. So it's how to write the content of those two functions and how to make your design decisions to actually shape it in some way that correspond to patterns I've seen in different domains. This is a part that is necessary for people to be able to write it, but then the other part is that after that people are mainly scared about running and writing the technical part about event sourcing. So the second part is focused about running event sourcing. So you have two functions which represent your domains like that, and you want to run them, and you have many options. Really many options. Keeping everything in memory or not, storing state or not, asynchronous or not, load balancing or not, and all that. And the idea is to take each of these cases and addressing them independently because each one is, due to the structure, easy to solve. And then the idea is to enable people to just choose the right level for them. Because trying to introduce everything directly leads, of course, to more operational complexity. It's normal. And some teams are ready for this and are already equipped to deal with operational complexity, and some others are smaller and it's more difficult for them. So the idea is to show all the stages you can take and show how introducing how the introduction of each stage is actually quite simple, and that you will be able to take this step when you need it, which make things easier. And the last part is about operations, because also people get scared about operations because a lot of people think that with billions of events and all that. This is a lot of things I want to talk about, and especially, for instance, people don't remember that accountants start a new book each year. They don't recompute everything for 10 years from the first book. So
Yeah.
the thing is that the streams, for instance, should not be unbounded. They should all have a maximum size number of events, and we know that it cannot go far beyond that. And so that at some point you can take them, archive them, and continue to run. Because as for any systems, what happened 10 years ago has few impact on what you do today. And it's interesting to keep this data for analytics or things like that, but not for operational purpose, of course. So it's important to understand how we can do that. People also get scared because they think we can not delete things. The question of the GDPR,
GDPR,
for
yeah.
instance, which is quite often with event sourcing. In event sourcing, we just want to write things this way because it's easy and efficient, but never changing the content of the event store is not required.
Yeah.
So it's totally possible. If you have streams per user, you can just remove the stream for your database. It's okay. When you have data that you don't want anymore in your event store, you can build a new one with the same data as the other one, but without the data you want to remove. It's okay, you can do it.
Okay.
It's okay. The thing is that your event store can have several roles, like giving you some logs about what happened. It's also efficient for operational purpose, like rebuilding and all that, the deployment, migration. But we don't have to be dogmatic with that. It's possible to actually write the same history a different way, or just remove some parts and all that. Not if you have a legal requirement to not remove things, of course. But most business don't have this problem. So,
yeah.
And in this case, the question of GDPR will be addressed in some specific way also.
So theoretically, you can't remove events, but you can build another one and take some projections and restart your system from this point.
Yeah, and the thing is that since it's mostly happen only, it's quite easy to start because you can rebuild the system offline if it takes some time. And just before copy the last events to the new one and start from there. So, because you know that when you have a 20 gigabytes or 1 terabyte database that is mutating in all the places, it's hard to know what changed and how to replicate changes. This is why most replication is based on logs, by the way. But when you have an happen-only database, you know the last point you replicated. And so it's easy to see all the change because they are all after that point. So it just takes the things that change after, apply them, and you can start. So for a lot of scenarios, yes, it's very easier to actually operate. You have to know that it's okay to change or rebuild an event store, to have to know that it's okay to do a limited time stream so that you can archive them. It's totally okay because it makes things easier. Yes, I've heard some people that didn't see that and ended up with event stores with billions of events. And the problem is that when your system has to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you cannot shut it down. It starts to be hard to operate.
Okay.
So split, and remove things.
So do you have some references about CQRS and event sourcing, except the book you are writing, and you didn't tell us when you will publish it.
So when it will be for now, I wrote mostly the first part, and I'm in the middle of the second one. I know most of the point I want to talk about in the rest of the book, and then I need some time to write it, of course, and then edition, and be sure that it's easy to complete, so it will take some time. I should have more time to work on it during the rest of the year, so I expect it for this year or next year, based on the time I took previously to work on it, so that should be okay. And other references, the thing is that there are quite some good material in the F# community, because some people are interested in the subject. You can try to find previous Greg Young videos he made during his conferences. And for if you're interested in domain-driven design, that is a book that is a bit actualized to more recent techniques. It's not talking frontally about domain-driven design, event sourcing directly, but it's a very good book about domain-driven design and will give you some good insight for event sourcing. It's Domain-Driven Design Made Functional by Scott Flashin, which is a really, really good book. Yeah, mostly that. There will be next week the conference in about event sourcing in Amsterdam, so I think most of the material should be online after that also.
Yes.
So,
DDD Europe. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Do you have anything to add, Jeremy?
No, not directly.
Okay.
Of course, if you have some questions, don't hesitate to reach me. We'll give my
we will let you your contact on the video so people can reach you. Thanks a lot to coming, having these rich conversations, and thank you the community. Thank you, Suat. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.